Hi, I'm Lisa Eddy, your host of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast. I'm so glad that you've made your way here and that I'm now sharing these podcasts here on YouTube. In my 25 years in the beauty industry, I have worked with thousands of women. I have witnessed so many beautiful, powerful, smart, and kind women who are hiding instead of shining. My mission is to empower you to own your true power and beauty inside and out, to be truly confident and shine through your skin. Lord knows the world needs your light. I'm committed to helping you understand the choices that you are making that are working for or against you. I'll also be sharing beauty tips and tools your mother never taught you, and together we will bust urban beauty myths. Make sure to subscribe today to receive episodes right when they are released. For those who prefer listening to the audio podcast, head over to sacredbeautylifestyle.com. That's sacredbeautylifestyle.com, and you can find the platform of your choice. Enjoy. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle Podcast. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of inviting Miss Stepanie Jameson here with me today. Stepanie is an intuitive empath, a soul coach, and two-time author. She is super passionate about helping the divine feminine energy rise on this planet and teaching her fellow sisters that it all starts from within. Welcome, Stepanie. I'm super happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here as well.
You are such a love and a light, and you just permeate inner and outer beauty. So you are such a perfect fit. Absolutely. So I wonder if you can share a little bit about your story and how you got where you are today.
Yeah. My story, that's a long one, but I will sum it up. Intuitive empath, as you said, psychic medium, and two-time author who, just like so many women on this planet, are growing through their awakening. I started going through a pretty big ascension process when I hit the age of 33 and slowly started remembering who I was. And wasn't just who I am as in Stepanie Jameson, it's who I am as the soul that came here and what my mission was. So the different chapters of my life began to make sense. And I realized that this longing that I had felt since childhood to help people, it all started to make sense. I never quite knew how. And then as I went through my own catalytic awakening, I realized that I was here to help people choose love over fear, to reprogram their thoughts, to fall back in love with themselves. A big part of what I teach is beauty from within. I have so many people who come to me who I help them, learn how to love themselves again and learn how to own their power and set boundaries and create their own reality. And it all started with me. I had to do the same thing. I had to learn how to love myself. And, that's an ever evolving process. I feel like with every level up, I'm learning how to love myself again and again and again as I unlearn limited beliefs, right? But that's a big part of how it started. Was there was just this unlearning and this relearning that took place. And as soon as I went through that initial catalytic awakening, I remembered who I was, what I was here to do, and was guided to create something very illogical. Very illogical.
Mm-hmm. Speak to that. Very illogical. Come again.
Yes, very much so. It was, Stepanie, you're here to help people awaken, and you're here to help women fall back in love with themselves, and men come into their sacred feminine and balance the head and the heart. You're here to teach the message of the age of Aquarius. You're a feeler. You're not just a thinker. You're the sensitive in the family, and you're the, I was always the oddball. Like, I felt like the oddball since I was a kid. Like, I never felt like I fit in. I had a hard time making friends when I was younger because I was like the 80-year-old in the 13-year-old's body. Like, I much rather would hang out with my grandma and I'd talk to her about all this crazy adult stuff. And it would be like, no, just go out and play. And I'm like, yeah, but why are we here?
Right.
So it was so growing up, I was taught, to think, to create and to do, just like so many of us are. And I was really told not to feel. It was more of think, and then, if the feeling works for you later, then great. But just like society and this patriarchal community we've been living in for so long teaches us to do. But I was always the kid that like felt so deeply. And then coming back to the awakening story, it was like, oh, that's why you've always felt so deeply. And oh, you kind of had to suppress in order to learn. And now you're going to teach other people how to move and navigate through that. So I had to kind of go through this whole thing about balancing the head and the heart, and balancing that bridge between logic and intuitive knowing. Yeah.
I love so much of what you've just shared and your mission. And one of the first things that came to mind was when you're talking about teaching self-love. I feel like people don't really understand, what does that mean when we say how to love yourself? What does that look like?
Right. Right. And that's because we're so conditioned from childhood to give or to make other people happy. I am the first to admit I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm an intuitive empath. So with me, the energy in the home or the energy in a room needs to feel good. Right. And so I had to learn, one of the very first things when it comes to self-love was boundaries. I was letting people come in and take energetic hits off of me left and right. And I had no idea I was even allowing that to happen. I just wanted everybody to be quote unquote happy, right? And so what I started noticing is when I was kind of being guided to start the self-love journey was I had to raise the bar on who had access to me. So I didn't need to change who I was, but I needed to not let the same types of people have access to me so, effortlessly. So that's a big part of self-love right there, is making sure that you're implementing boundaries. I often encourage my clients to write down on a piece of paper, how do they want to feel and how do they want to be treated? And for your listeners, I would recommend, you want to feel cherished and you want to be treated with an equal energy exchange. And so that was something that I had to really do. And it's been very challenging along my journey. And of course, with every level up, there's a new challenge, but am I being treated with an equal energy exchange here? Do I feel cherished after I have this conversation or I interact with this person? And if not, guess what? It's got to go. It's got to shift. Something's got to change, right?
I love the simplicity of that. Thank you for sharing that with our listeners here, that really tangible and thought-provoking way in, because a lot of times it can be so innate, and many of our listeners here are intuits and empaths and healers and givers and caretakers. And it just is so innate. Sometimes we don't even think, we're just doing, we're just giving. And so to really pay attention. And one of the things that I learned, if I could just build on what you're sharing, is also paying attention to how you feel when you leave someone.
Yes.
Because you might feel really good in their presence because you're having fun. And sometimes you're bringing so much light. Like I know for myself, and I'm sure for you and many of our listeners who have been doing the work, who have been leveling up. When you bring a lot of light, sometimes you reflect so much light on the person standing in front of you or next to you that you think that they're bringing it too. And then they leave and you're drained. So I think that's also really something to pay attention to. You guys picking this up?
I tell my clients the exact same thing. You have to start paying attention to how you feel after you interact with someone. If it doesn't feel as though you're feeling lit up or that there was some sort of an equal exchange, nope.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good pointer. And I love that you brought in boundaries as so important. And you said something right before we hopped on, and I hit the record right when we hopped on the call that cracked me up. I just love that talking about the sacred feminine is so important right now as we're going through this huge shift on planet Earth. And I love that you're helping usher this change in. And you said the sacred feminine, she sets boundaries and she creates her own reality. And I was like, I had to share that.
That's right. And it's a challenging path to walk sometimes, but she knows, she's aware of her inner voice. She is aware of what her intuitive knowing is. She trusts it and she creates, and she doesn't let anyone get in the way of it. She pivots as she's being guided to pivot, and she allows things to flow to her and through her. Right? She is the creator. So a big part of that is letting go of all the things that are keeping you out of alignment with loving yourself 110%. Because as soon as you become that vibration of love, all of that stuff is going to start coming to you effortlessly. And that's when you start to become more of a master manifester, is that you become an energetic match for the very thing that you're desiring.
Right. That's why it's so important to pay attention to how we're feeling, because our emotions are what really help amplify and create that magnetic pull, calling back what we want, right? So if you are listening to this and you happen to be someone who can be a little bit obsessive in your thoughts, and if you can worry, that is actually the recipe of creating what you don't want. So that's just like a little start for you to bring awareness if you're not sure, when we're talking about creating, how to create what you want from how you feel. Do you want to build on that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am totally an overthinker. I've always been an overthinker. I'm little Miss Logical. In fact, I often say to people that I was like the most skeptical intuitive you'll ever meet. Like, it's always been prove it to me, right? And I've really had to learn to walk by this path of faith that has been thrown onto me from the universe. One of the things that I can say, a lot of times, if there are sensitives or just people in general who are listening to this podcast, if you're overthinking, it's typically a sign that you're not energetically grounded. So you need to go do something to ground yourself. So physical exercise, walk, go outside, drink a bottle of water, douse yourself in a bath, go swim in the ocean if you're by water or a lake, whatever. But you also have to know that it's not okay to berate yourself. If you're having a moment and you're freaking out, just say, it's okay, I had that thought. Offer yourself compassion and grace. And then you want to just really kind of look into that and go, well, okay, I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling worried. I'm feeling all of these things. How can I pivot now? Instead of staying in that emotion of worry, what is this clarity that's bringing through to me? Like, what is this showing me? Okay, well, I'm not feeling happy in this job situation. So apparently my logical mind is now telling me I need to take action towards something else. So it's about feeling first and then acting instead of just staying. The feminine is the abyss, right? She's the ocean. She dives deep. And then the masculine is the desert. So you really can't have one without the other. You have to be able to utilize them together, or else you're going to constantly be swinging. You'll be going back and forth like crazy.
Like the Gemini.
Yeah. It's kind of like yep. And that's, or a Pisces. One of the biggest things about those dual signs is, you can go and full disclosure, I am a Gemini. I'm a Gemini, Pisces, Cancer. And one of the things is that I always see both sides. Always see both sides. So that is something that I would recommend to anybody who's listening, is that for me, it was about learning how to slow down to level up, slow down, honor my intuition, and then act. So whatever you're feeling, you don't have to stay in it. You use it to pivot. It's the map.
I love that you reminded us to slow down. That is the first step to really being able to anchor in your intuition, your listening, your higher self, right? So thank you for that. And every time you say pivot, I'm a dancer. So every time you say pivot, and listeners, you can use this as well. It might be like a little fun thing to imagine yourself pivoting on the dance floor, like play with this. Like that's what I hear and see is the visual of, redirecting.
Yes, absolutely.
And I also really appreciate that you brought in water as a tool for grounding. I don't think we often hear that when someone's talking about grounding. It's like, oh, get your feet on the earth, or, calling yourself into this moment, calling yourself into your body. And water actually helps us conduct the light, conduct electricity to let it run through our body. So thank you for that reminder. Yeah. I'm a huge proponent of water.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that I can say on my journey is that if I have had moments where I've been freaking out in the past, because, the awakening journey, the ascension process itself, it's a huge amounts of shadow work, right? So, there's a lot that's thrown at you and a lot of unlearning that needs to happen. I will go and I will drink a bottle of water. There's a reason I bring water with me every time I do a podcast or anything or I'm working with clients or I'm doing group coaching. If a lot of energy is being thrown at me, I know one of the very first things that I can do is just start drinking water, and energetically, I just start feeling better.
Because you're flushing and moving. Water is movement.
Yes.
Love it. I always like to make sure people get the why out of it. Because don't you feel like you remember something better when you understand why you're doing it?
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So thank you for that. Yeah, and I also really appreciate that you're a Gemini and that you are working on both the masculine and the feminine with
Uh-huh.
men and women, or the physical presentation of, let's say, masculine and feminine, right?
I've
Because,
had to. Yeah, I've had to. It's a crucial part of my journey. I don't feel very much like a gem. I definitely feel more so like the water signs that I have so heavily in my chart. But I definitely have the gift of communication like a gem. And I definitely have the ability to overthink like a gem for sure. And, I feel like sometimes gems get a bad rap because gems definitely can see both sides of everything and they can battle one another, right?
right.
Instead of working together. And so it's been a crucial part of my own journey to make sure that I work the two sides are working together versus against each other. So that's why I teach people that it's all about feeling and then acting, so that that head and that heart are actually in balance. That feminine heart and the masculine mind are in balance. The masculine is to be of service to the feminine.
Right. And
Yeah,
men really do love to serve, come to think of it. Like the
they do.
masculine loves to serve.
Well, healthy giving guys love to serve. There's a difference
Yes.
between a healthy giving guy and an unhealthy receiver. So if you've got a guy on your or a partner on your journey with you where you find yourself over giving, there may be an imbalance there where he's used to receiving and you need to step back into your feminine and receive versus in your masculine too much. But that's a whole nother topic.
No, that was a great explanation, though, of how things can get out of balance, because we were talking about balance with the Gemini. I actually love Gemini women and really can appreciate a lot of the traits you were talking about. So I love that you went there. I also meant the work that you do out in the world, not just internally, with men and women, that
Yes.
you're working with men as well, because men sometimes are left out on
Yeah.
this journey. There's a lot about the feminine and working with women these days, and I think it's really important.
Yeah. I've had more and more men to come to me. At first it was all women, and I've slowly started seeing more men want to work with me and open themselves up to their feminine energy, because everyone on this planet is awakening. And healthy giving guys or unhealthy receivers, they'll come to me and they'll go, "But how can I flip? How can I heal?" And we get them back into balance with the head and the heart versus just the head. And same thing with women. There's a lot of women who I work with who are very much in their heads and they do what's most logical, and then I get them back into their heart space, and then they start making decisions from their heart versus their head. And so that's been a really fun thing for me to witness. Is you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people out here who go, "Oh, it's all just women awakening, women awakening." That's bullshit. Men are awakening like crazy. Their hearts are starting to stir and they are very much wanting to align. In fact, I have one client who I just worked with last week. He is so in alignment with his feminine and starting to balance the two. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
I love witnessing men that are conscious and doing the work. It is incredibly beautiful. I have the gift of having some really conscious men around me. I was just working with one recently as one of my healers or coaches that is just so, and he's also got like Papa energy. He's like 77, so he just brings this richness. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
important, and we're missing that. Speaking of that, we're missing the elders in our culture, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I'm noticing that there's more and more older people coming my way, like in their 60s, 70s. And I think the oldest person I've worked with is 76. And she told me that she healed more in a 45-minute session with me than she did in 45 years of counseling, because she started understanding the balance between the head and the heart. She'd been married 4 times. She'd been in a lot of codependent relationships, and it all came down to a lack of self-love. And she had found herself being the masculine in the relationship, and she had found herself being the overgiver and the doer and all that. So what was she attracting? She was attracting unhealthy receivers. And so that right there was this toxic recipe for a codependent relationship. And then once she started opening herself up to receiving at 76 years old, she attracted somebody who wanted to give to her.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you could delve into that a little bit more and explain to our listeners here what would be signs of, I don't even know if I'm going to word it exactly right, what she was coming with. So if you can kind of recap what she was bringing it to you to work with, and what would the signs be?
Sure. So I work with a lot of people. I actually have a 90-day program that helps people get themselves out of this situation because if you are an over giver, if you live from your head, which 98% of the women on this planet typically do, and as they start their healing work, is they have been head go, go, go. Okay. So they get themselves in this situation where they become more masculine dominant. They're thinking, they're doing, they're giving versus the feminine who is feeling, receiving, and flowing. So if they get themselves in a situation and they find themselves where they're in these situations with a partner and the scales are tipped too much like that, well, what are they going to do? They're going to attract unhealthy receivers, and they're always going to feel burnt out in relationships because they're giving, 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 and they're not opening themselves up to receiving. And so my job is to flip that and get women and men back into their heart. And you said earlier, I had a beautiful opportunity to work with a group of men. This would have been about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the things that I asked these men is I said, what is the sexiest thing to you about a woman? And every single one of them said, when she allows me to give to her. And I looked at her or I looked at that group of men and I said, you've got to be kidding me. I said, and all the women in the room were like, what? And they said, well, you guys don't even allow us to give you a compliment without saying that you're not pretty or that you're not this, or you don't allow us to put away the groceries because you're hyper criticizing how we put away things. So what ends up happening is that you can have certain situations here. You can be a woman who's always in her masculine who attracts an unhealthy receiver, or you can be a woman who's in her masculine who flips a giver into a receiver because you're flipping him into his feminine because you refuse to be in your feminine. So there's a few things that can happen here. This is a whole new conversation.
I love it. I love it. But I wonder if you can even give some more examples, because that's like, it could be getting our listeners in their head, right? Like, what does it mean, for example, to be an unhealthy receiver? Let's start there.
So an unhealthy receiver would be somebody who takes, has no problem receiving, has no problems receiving compliments, has no problems with you picking up the bill, has no problem with, always taking. It's just that simple. They're always taking, and you'll find yourself feeling resentful towards them, tired, energetically burnt out, always trying to make them happy versus the other way around. So, an unhealthy receiver is going to be somebody who has no problem putting themselves first and dismissing your needs.
Right. And it really is two sides of the same coin, giving and receiving. And again, it comes back to that balance we're always talking about and striving for in life, right? Here's another prime example of that balance is so essential in all of our relationships, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I was at the extreme opposite of that years ago. I was just such an overgiver. It was insane. I dismissed my own needs to make everyone else happy. And then I realized, wow, I have a bunch of people here who don't cherish me.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, most of us do.
The empaths,
It's the sensitives. You find yourself seeing the good in everyone or wanting, the fixers, but that also is a disempowered empath. Once you start getting yourself into a place where you're more empowered and you start loving yourself and putting boundaries at play and you allow that quiet time to get in tune with your own vibration, that stops. And you're going to piss a lot of people off because people aren't used to you setting boundaries. So then all of a sudden they're like, who's this bitch?
Yeah, this is not our relationship. You're like, oh, it is our new one.
Right. Right. And so then they have the opportunity to pivot and they can either rise up to meet you and stay on your journey, or the two of you go, different ways. And if it's meant to be, it'll come back again later when you've both done some healing. And it's really important to note as well that unhealthy receivers, unhealthy givers, over givers, that can be in a friendship sense, that can be in family, that can be romance, that can be anything. You basically just want to check in with your patterns. Where are you giving more than you're receiving? And is it worth it?
And that's a great question to ponder. And to really journal on. I think these are really good journal prompts.
Yeah. And it keeps you out of alignment with your intuition. The more I spent alone and spent time loving myself and really allowing myself to tune into my own vibration, my intuition and my natural psychic abilities, my natural knowing, all of that just came through tenfold because all the noise wasn't drowning it out anymore. Other people's projections or other people's insecurities or fears or limited beliefs, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's real power in getting back into alignment with making sure that your heart is the master and your head is the tool to achieve what it wants to create.
That's a great way of putting that. And sometimes it does take going into solitude a little bit, pulling back, pulling into your shell a little bit when you are examining and learning, relearning, unlearning to relearn all of these patterns that some of them are so innate, you have no idea they're even going on. That's why I wanted you to explain, what does it look like when it's unhealthy? How does that manifest so that we can process to shift? And I think it's so beautiful that you asked that question to men, and that their answer about the most sexiest thing about a woman is when she lets him take care of her. What was
to give to her?
To give to her. Yes.
So they want us to give, they want a healthy giving guy. He wants to give to you. He wants to be a man. And so many of us women are out there emasculating men that they can't stand in their masculine. So either the relationship's going to break up because the woman is too controlling or too masculine or too in her head or too, whatever, or they're going to flip, and then that becomes a toxic codependent relationship, because really now at this point they're just together to validate one another. And that's, again, a whole nother healing thing.
Journey. It's another journey if you find yourself on that.
We all have it. There's everybody's journey is completely individual, and everybody's healing journey is, whatever it is, but it does basically come down to finding that balance within yourself and coming into sacred union within yourself. And when you do that, again, it'll come again and again and again and again. You're going to have to do it with every level up on the journey, finding your balance again with every new level. But it really is about coming into that, because once you do, things become more effortless and you start to attract more and you start to open up to new opportunities, or you allow new people to come into your life, or, whatever it is, the universe will show you, hey, once you've done a little bit more of this healing work, great, this is the next chapter, and this is where you're meant to go. You just have to simply trust and put that foot in front of that one foot in front of the other. Right?
Simply trust. And trusting can be the hardest thing when we've been so let down or misled, right? I know you didn't mean it lightly, but it's all simple in theory. All of the greatest teachings are simple. They're just not easy typically.
No, not at all. In fact, trusting is half the battle, if not more. But again, we're talking about coming back into alignment with the sacred feminine. Well, guess what the sacred feminine does? She trusts. Yeah. She trusts in how she feels. She owns her intuitive power. She takes action on where it is that she's being guided to go and what to create. It doesn't have to be logical, because the feminine is not logical.
Thank you for saying that. It doesn't have to make sense.
No.
I love that. I'm going to share something as an example for our listeners, because sometimes our body speaks to us through our body often speaks to us through messages, right? You might get, whether it's a pain or whether you get chills in your body as an affirmation or confirmation that what you're doing is right. And I never thought that I would be joining a teacher training art program. But when somebody was speaking about this program for intentional creativity, like my whole body was like singing, hallelujah. It was like, it couldn't have been more clear. So if you don't already know this, beautiful listeners, that is one of the ways that your body, your soul is giving you confirmation that you're on the right track. And sometimes for women, we'll even feel that in our yoni. And that time I did, like, I literally got chills in my yoni.
Yes, ma'am. That's a thing. That is definitely a thing. That's the feminine coming through and just letting you know that you're in alignment. If we could just start looking at ourselves, these meat suits that we're walking around in, as instruments, and we have these little satellite receivers at the top of our head, if we could learn how to tune in and use our bodies as the instruments that we are, people would have far more clarity. But the way that you do that and they'd be able to trust more is by slowing down, offering yourself more grace, offering yourself more self-care. I often tell my clients, if you don't have 20 minutes, 30 minutes a day to meditate, you should probably be taking an hour.
Say the same thing. Then
Right?
you need double.
Right. You need double, and however that looks right to you. You don't have to sit in traditional Om pose, but if meditation to you is coloring, if meditation to you is going for a walk, if is a creative project, then fantastic. But don't distract yourself. Don't distract yourself with the people who are going to enable you. Don't distract yourself with drugs and alcohol. Don't distract yourself with, whatever it is that keeps you distracted. Allow yourself to dive deep and just get quiet. That's when the clarity starts to come. But a lot of people like to avoid that work. I know I did for a long time. I still have my moments, because when you slow down and you feel, guess what? More work needs to be done, right? More pivots need to be made, because the heart, once she starts speaking and once she starts being in charge, she doesn't want to relinquish her power. She wants you to shine bigger and brighter than you ever have, right?
Love that so much. What beautiful shares and teachings here. Thank you so much. I want to go back to something that you shared and highlight this a little bit, because the feminine is about receiving, right? And you shared that women often cannot receive even a compliment. And I have found this time and time and again. So I'm posing the question to you listening to this podcast right now. How many times have you caught yourself when somebody might say, "Oh my gosh, your hair looks so good." And you go, "Oh my God, no, I need a haircut." Or, "Oh, I love that. Oh, this old thing," if someone compliments you on an outfit or what have you. My invitation to you is to just practice actually receiving the compliment. And I personally would go as so far to say, "Thank you, you're right." Like, because I love what I'm wearing, or I love I know when I'm having a good hair day, and I can compliment myself too. So when you could say thank you, it's true. That's even like you are really reinforcing that. So
that's a part of some homework that I've assigned some clients before. Is I just simply say, all you have to do is say thank you. If someone wants to open a door for you, thank you. If someone wants to put away the dishes for you, thank you. If someone wants to tell you that you're beautiful, thank you. And one of the things that your listeners can do is when they are given opportunities to receive, they'll know very quickly if they have a hard time receiving. And that's kind of the initiation process to this path, is really having to unlearn and get yourself to a point where you are able to receive, because there's so many times where we ask the universe for what we want, whether it be the job, the money, the relationship, whatever, and then we actually delay it from coming in due to our expectations and attachments on how we think things should be. So this is a great way, if you're trying to manifest something, whatever it may be, or get into alignment, is to just simply allow yourself to receive a compliment, receive someone buying you dinner, receive someone doing something for you, and just simply saying thank you without control or criticism. Your whole world will begin to change.
Thank you for building on that and sharing that beautiful tip. I love it. Okay. Yes. I have a couple of questions for you for our listeners here, my dear. Is there something that you would go back and whisper in the ear of your 20-year-old self, something that you really wish that you knew then?
There's a few things.
Bring it. Tell us.
First thing I would say is, you're different for a reason. Own it. Yeah. Honor it. You are an old soul and you're here with a purpose. Allow yourself to go into that a little bit deeper. Secondly, it wasn't your fault. And so any of the childhood trauma, any of the garbage from that time till I was 20, I would definitely remind my 20-year-old self of that. And then lastly, it would be, make sure that you're choosing love over fear in every moment. So you're choosing hope over worry. You're choosing gratitude over resentment. You're choosing faith and joy and over worry, anxiety, doubt, that kind of stuff. I feel like reminding myself that energy is everything would have been great at that age.
Love it. Beautiful teachings. Yes. And is there something that you would scream from a mountaintop, like your big message that you want the whole world to know?
Love over fear. Yeah. Minute by minute. offer yourself grace and compassion and know that you really do have all the answers that sit within inside of you, and make sure that you're willing to unlearn and relearn.
I love it so much. You are such a love and have such beautiful wisdom to share. Thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
your time and energy and wisdom and heart with the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle podcast listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you
Tell
so much.
us, my pleasure. Tell us where we can find you.
You can find me at just divinesouljourney.net. Yeah. I,
DivineSoulJourney.net.
I think I included a couple free gifts. There's a 30-day spiritual badass journal. That's a great journal for anybody who's just starting to kind of go down the path. And I think there's a free meditation for your listeners as well. So
Fantastic. So all of this will be in the show notes for you, beauties. Again, thank you so much. I'm Lisa Eddy, your host of the Sacred Beauty Lifestyle podcast, which is now being shared here on YouTube. I hope this episode brought you insights and inspiration to radiate and shine with confidence. Remember to subscribe so you receive new episodes hot off the press right when they are released. And follow me on Instagram for more juicy tips at I am Lisa Eddy. Also, ladies and gentlemen, when you subscribe, like, and share these episodes, it helps me to get seen by more people. And that means a lot to me because I am committed to reaching millions of women across the globe and waking them up to the sacred beauty lifestyle, owning their true power and beauty, both inside and out. Now, more than ever, we need more women shining instead of hiding. When we band together, we are unstoppable. This is how we change the world, together. Remember the sacred beauty lifestyle and get on out there and shine. The world needs your light.